Welcome to the Football Game Plan NFL All-32 show, where we break down every game every week across the NFL. I am David Hassagen. With me, the czar of the playbook, Emery Hunt. Week 1 is over, but we already have a lot of storylines to talk about. Emery, let's start our 4-minute offense. Let's start with the big one. The Antonio Brown saga in Oakland is over. AB goes to New England. How does he improve the Patriots?
Well, you're adding a future Hall of Famer to what is already a pretty good receiving core with Josh Gordon, Julian Edelman. They still have a rookie that's on the pup list or IR right now, short-term IR in N'Keal Harry. They've elevated another rookie in Jacoby Myers out of NC State. This is a well-stocked receiving core. It's only going to make New England that much better. It'll be interesting to see what role he plays. Does he play predominantly outside, or they move him inside and force Edelman to play a different role because Edelman seems to thrive in the slot. So that'll be the one thing that I'll be looking for, how they utilize Antonio Brown and where they have him aligned and how he's going to be effective. He can play outside or in. We'll see where he lines up in his offense and whose ticks get taken away a little bit. Maybe it's the rookie, but you got to find a way to keep Brown, Gordon, and Edelman on the field. This is a ridiculous haul for New England.
1 year, $15 million, $9 million guaranteed, the deal for AB. Meanwhile, in Baltimore, so much for the running back being played at quarterback. Lamar Jackson went off in Week 1 for Baltimore against the Miami Dolphins. 17 of 20, 324, 5 touchdowns. It's time to pay attention to Lamar Jackson.
Should have been time to pay attention to him in 2017.
I agree.
When he won the Heisman. But what was interesting, or when he 2016 won it, came back in 17 and had a better year than was the draft pick of 2018. But the jump he made from his freshman year to the sophomore season when he won the Heisman to what he made last year his final year in Louisville, he played better that year than he did his Heisman Trophy winning season. And then as a rookie, being thrown into the lineup, 6-1 as a starter, the one loss coming on a Hail Mary, essentially a lucky play on 4th down against Kansas City. They get into the playoffs. They didn't allow him to throw until it was late in the game. 2 touchdowns, got the ball back with a chance to win. And that's when you saw, okay, this guy definitely has that it factor. This year, all offseason, you heard people talk about how he couldn't throw, how he's a running back or a receiver playing quarterback. And all he did was stay humble, stay quiet, went out there and balled out against an NFL team, one of the premier NFL teams in the Miami Dolphins. So yes, Miami is doing some stuff right now, but historically, Miami, 72 Dolphins, one of the premier teams in the AFL. Historically, that's one of the Tiffany franchises of the National Football League. So to say this was not a good football team, yeah, it's not a good football team, but it's still an NFL team, and he went out there and balled out. Ravens are dangerous moving forward.
Staying in the AFC, there was a lot of hype about the New York Jets and the Cleveland Browns. Would one of these teams or both of them make the playoffs as a wild card team? Right now, the answer is neither of them. How do both of these teams recover? What major problems do they have to fix?
Well, it's interesting because these two teams that had a lot of fanfare coming in, and rightfully so, because of the acquisitions and because of the young quarterbacks, get it. But now these two teams are playing here Week 2 on Monday night. So in another historic game, 50th anniversary of Monday Night Football. First Monday Night Football game was the Jets and the Browns. Joe Namath out there in Cleveland. So now these two teams have to get back to basics, block out all the noise. For the Jets, their offense has to play better. For the Browns, their offense also has to play better. You look along the line of scrimmage, continuity is going to be king. Who improves the offensive line first is going to be who gets their first win. But I hate to be the team that goes 0-2 in this matchup because you're in 2 markets where everyone, Colin Cowherd specifically, can't wait to bash the Browns, and this New York market can't wait they have the back page already ready if the Jets are 0-2.
Let's move on to some of the injuries from Week 1. Tyreek Hill leaving the game for the Chiefs. C.J. Copeland went down for the Jets. But the biggest one is Nick Foles going down for Jacksonville. But we just heard just before we went on the air, there's been a replacement signed.
Yeah, Josh Dobbs is going to be probably the backup in Jacksonville. And you saw when C.J. Mosley went down for the Jets how bad that Jets defense started to face against the Bills. They couldn't really get off the field, couldn't make stops. Mosley had the touchdown in the game, the pick 6 early on in that contest. So his injury, Tyreek Hill, from what it sounds like, is going to miss a few weeks, they say, in quotation. So we don't know how that's going to play out. Nick Foles goes down. He's probably going to miss a few weeks, maybe a month or so. Not to put a timetable on it, but he had a broken collarbone, I believe. So that's got to hurt, number one, and also it's going to help the backup, which was Gardner Minshew, come in and play better. He started off well against Kansas City and then started to tail off late, so we'll see what he does with a full week of prep. So, yeah, the injuries have already hit the NFL hard in week 1.
And it's always going to continue. So let's go now into our big matchup to watch for week 2, and that's the Thursday night matchup between Tampa Bay and Carolina. A lot of people saying that this isn't a great Thursday night game, but there's a lot more than on the paper here. Let's talk about when Tampa Bay has the ball. What are you going to be looking for?
Jameis Winston has to cut down on the turnovers. 2 pick sixes last week against San Francisco. More pick sixes than he threw touchdowns. So if he can cut the turnovers, the Bucs move the ball really well against a very good defensive front 7 of San Francisco. Credit the secondary for picking off the balls and bringing it back for a touchdown. But I thought they had some success moving the football. If he can't protect the ball, all is for naught. I love what I saw from Ronald Jones running the ball, so maybe they found a running game, but he has to, Jameis Winston, protect the football and play much better in that regard in order for them to have a chance.
What about when Carolina has the ball? Obviously a much more balanced attack this year for the Panthers. How does Tampa Bay slow down that attack?
Well, Tampa Bay's defense, I think, was doing a great job of applying pressure. They had a pick six themselves. Vernon Hargreaves turned the ball over, got it into the end zone. Now, for Carolina's offense, when you think about what they do well, versatility. Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, Cam Newton, maybe in his second game getting comfortable to that throwing motion, he will perform well. That's going to be what I'm going to be watching for. Defensively, can they take advantage of those opportunities that Jameis Winston will give them in making plays on the ball? So for Carolina, it's about playing your game. I love how in spurts they played well, but they got to find that consistency. Again, week 1 is always what you like to call the 5th preseason game. First time guys get out there for a full game and play, especially if you're breaking in a new throwing motion or a new offense.
Right.
So all of that is stuff that we have to continue to watch for in this game. But turnovers is going to be key in this one, especially if you're Tampa Bay.
How do you see this game going? Who wins it?
I like Carolina in this one. I do like the fact that they can run the football. I like their versatility. Cam Newton, I think, will play better in the second game. Again, getting used to that throwing motion. And defensively, Luke Kuechly versus Jameis Winston and getting guys aligned in the right spot. Eric Reed on the back end as well. I think defensively, this is a bad matchup for Tampa Bay, so I'm going with Carolina to win this one.
When we come back, we will break down all of the Week 2 action right here on the NFL 32 show on Game Plus Network.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Ninth and Lux. Visit the website ninethandlux.com and check out the clothing gallery. Do You Music with featured artist IW and his latest album, Season 2. You can check that out on iTunes as well as doyoumusic.com. Nesby Phipps, art, life, entertainment. NesbyPhipps.com. Grind It Out Fitness. Visit the website grinditoutfitness.com and download the app.
Welcome back to the Football Game Plan NFL All-32 show. It's now time to break down all of the Week 2 action starting on Sunday. Let's start with the Dallas Cowboys taking on the Washington Redskins. Dallas looked really, really good in Week 1 against the New York Giants. Washington, not so much. How did these two teams move forward in Week 2?
It's funny because Washington started out with a 20-0 lead against Philadelphia. They lost a key part to their defense in Jonathan Allen, who may miss a few weeks as well with the torn MCL. So that's going to be something that you want to keep an eye on for that defense. It's a huge loss. The Cowboys offense looked like a hot knife through butter, especially the passing game. Dak Prescott was able to work a lot of different targets involved, get a lot of different targets involved, 4 touchdown passes, very efficient play, and effective play. Probably going to see better play from Ezekiel Elliott in his second game. I like Dallas to win this one big over Washington.
And Jerry Jones saying that contract negotiation with Dak Prescott is actually heating up, and he said, quote, imminent. Game by game, it's getting more expensive. Let's move on to the next one. 2 surprising teams from Week 1, the Colts and the Titans. Nobody thought Indianapolis was going to be any good. Same for the Titans, and they both got big, big performances this past week.
Well, if folks out there watch Football Game Plan, they knew that I believe that the Colts wouldn't take a step back without Andrew Luck.
That's true.
However, when you talk about Tennessee, if you could just bottle up the amount of hate that they had, and the amount of disgust they had for that Browns football team after hearing about them all offseason long, they could have beaten the military that day in Week 1. So they really wanted to beat the Browns. This one, let's see how up they are for this Colts team who comes in balanced. Jacoby Brissett had that game into overtime. They had a chance to win. Great job by him. This poses a different challenge, in my opinion. Their offensive line is a lot better than Cleveland's offensive line, so we will see if Tennessee can get that same amount of pressure. But I do like the Colts to win this ball game. And this is going to be funny to say or weird to say, but I can trust Jacoby Brissett more so than Marcus Mariota. I just like the way he plays with confidence. He makes great decisions with the football. I like the Colts.
Moving on to the next matchup, Seahawks taking on the Steelers. Pittsburgh did not look good on Sunday night against the New England Patriots. They said they were fine without AB and Le'Veon Bell. Maybe there's some question marks going up right now.
Well, let's hope they can stop the underneath passing game this week against Seattle. That's one thing they couldn't stop at all against New England. What I like about this matchup for Seattle is the fact that they are still aggressive on both sides of the line of scrimmage. They add Jadeveon Clowney, who started off well in that game last week against Cincinnati. I like Seattle in this matchup. Pittsburgh's offense still doesn't have, for me, that element of explosiveness. They got good players, but they don't have those game breakers. Funny because you lose guys in Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell and wonder why you don't have playmakers. So we'll see how this offense performs. I think the Seattle Seahawks get a victory, a close one, against Pittsburgh.
Deja vu for the Buffalo Bills. They're back at MetLife in Week 2, this time taking on Big Blue, the New York Giants. Buffalo looked very, very good defensively against the New York Jets. The Giants, in the last drive, brought on Daniel Jones. Is there going to be even more question marks in this game? How do you see this one going?
It's an interesting matchup because the Bills' defense, I've already said on record, is the best in the AFC East. They can turn the ball over. They can get after the quarterback. I think they'll have a tougher challenge this week against an offense that quietly was able to have some success against the Cowboys early on in that ball game. They have a game breaker in Saquon Barkley. I like the Giants in this game. I still don't trust Josh Allen to be consistent enough over the course of a game. He was good in that last drive. Most importantly, they needed him to be good in that last drive. He got the touchdown. But let's be honest, the play before the field goal that ultimately got them the win, he nearly threw an interception. The ball hit the cornerback in the face. So that's something that he has to get better, find that consistency. I like the Giants to win this one.
Let's move on to the Patriots taking on the Dolphins. This will be a revenge game for New England, who lost in Miami on that wild play last season. But if Week 1's anything to go by, this one might be over by the end of the first quarter. Never mind halftime, the first game for Antonio Brown in a Patriots uniform. What hope does Miami have?
For whatever reason, the Patriots don't seem to play well in Miami. I can't call it, but I think you'll see a much better performance from Miami in this ball game because it's a division rival. They got embarrassed last week, but there's no way the Patriots lose this ball game. I'm taking New England. That's all the analysis I have for that one. I'll take New England.
Jacksonville Jaguars taking on the Texans. The Jags also not looking good. The Houston defense against a backup quarterback for Jacksonville, that's not good on paper.
Yeah, it's probably going to be a lot of Leonard Fournette in this ball game to try to ease Gardner Minshew into this ball game and have him have that early success he had against Kansas City. I just like Deshaun Watson. I love the way they can work touchdown and check down. I think they take advantage of a secondary outside of Jalen Ramsey that tends to give up a little bit more in the passing game. I like Houston.
Another matchup in the NFC North, back-to-back weeks for the Packers, who this time will host the Minnesota Vikings. Many people saying that the Vikings might be the power in this division now. Chicago and Green Bay might have something to say about that. This is a critical game early in the season.
And it's going to be a good one because you have Dalvin Cook coming off of a 100-yard game last week in their opener. Kirk Cousins only had to throw the football 10 times, so didn't really have to throw much in that matchup. Green Bay's defense was just as good as Minnesota's defense against Atlanta and Green Bay, obviously against Chicago. I think the defenses will be the story of this game. Which quarterback can you trust? That's one of my favorite sayings. So if it comes down to your running game is stopped, your passing game is ineffective, who can you trust to come through in the clutch to make a final drive to get you points to win? To me, that's Aaron Rodgers over Kirk Cousins. Fantastic matchup here in the NFC North. And if you're Green Bay, and if you can get a win, that puts you 2-0 in the division right off the bat. So you're playing with house money. I do think they get the win. I like the way their defense plays. They can get after the quarterback. They can take the ball away. I see both happening against Minnesota. I like the Packers.
Let's move on to one more game before we take a quick break. Chargers at the Lions. LA looked pretty decent in their first game. The Lions had trouble. They ended up getting a tie against the Arizona Cardinals. What does Detroit have to do to improve for Week 2?
Well, they have to close out games. You saw them take their foot off the gas against Arizona, allow a team that you had beat to not only find confidence, but tie the ball game with a chance to win. Think about when they were trying to run out the clock to play for the tie in overtime.
Yeah.
Matt Stafford hit that defensive back in the face with the ball. He catches that ball, steps out of bounds. There's 4 seconds left in overtime. Arizona kicks the field goal. They win the game. So they have to play better, close out this game, close out that team. But right now, I look at what Los Angeles did last week, fighting through, getting the win. But they're passing in with their backs in the out of the backfield. Were impressive. Austin Eckler had a great game. I like Los Angeles to win this one against Detroit.
After this short break, we will cover the rest of the games in Week 2, including a highly anticipated Monday night clash. Stay with us.
Football Game Plan is brought to you in part by Financial Coaching LLC, Investment, Retirement, Security. Stewardship Credit. Financial growth is in your hands. StewardshipCredit.com. Adrienne Marie Photo, photographer, writer, management. AdrienneMariePhotography.com. Lock Multimedia.
Welcome back, fans. Let's get back to the Week 2 previews. A close game is anticipated in Ohio. The Cincinnati Bengals taking on the 49ers. San Fran actually looked pretty good in Week 1.
So did Cincinnati. They had an opportunity to win that matchup against Seattle. But when you look at San Francisco, defensively, I came away highly impressed. What they can do on the back end, can they have an encore performance in coverage against the Cincinnati team that can operate the deep passing game and intermediate passing game? We saw John Ross have a big day. I was more worried about their inability to run the football with effectiveness against Seattle. Will they find the same lack of success against San Francisco? I don't know. I will take the Bengals though in this one.
An interesting game in Baltimore. The Cardinals come visiting to Baltimore to take on the Ravens. Lamar Jackson, we talked about him before, an incredible Week 1 for him. The Cardinals, not so much. A draw. We'll see what happens with Kyler Murray in the second game.
Yeah, but Kyler Murray was also the reason why they came back. He started to hit his stride as a passer, started to find Larry Fitzgerald, which is always a great thing to do. What can they do against a defense that is really nonstop pressure, and not just from the front four, but also from the second level and in the secondary? They play press out there. They're aggressive. They take chances on the ball. I think this will be more about the defense than the Ravens' offense. I do like Baltimore to win this ball game. Look for back-to-back strong weeks for Lamar Jackson, but the Ravens' defense against a rookie quarterback in a spread offense that has some protection issues, to me, this has Baltimore's defense written all over it.
The Chiefs taking on the Raiders, one of the older rivalries in the NFL. Would have been a really explosive game if Antonio Brown was still in Oakland, but the Kansas City Chiefs offense has been clicking non-stop. Could we still see a high-scoring game in this one, you think?
It's always a possibility, and shout out to Keelan Dawes for getting that bag from the Raiders. Got cut, was on Jacksonville's practice squad, was able to up his price to get back to Oakland, fully guaranteed contract, so you got to give him props for getting the bag. But in this ball game, Kansas City's offense, even without Tyreek Hill, still has enough playmakers. Oh, we forgot to mention, they still have Mecole Hardman. They still have Sammy Watkins, who went nuts in Week 1. A healthy Sammy Watkins is one of the better receivers in the game. They take care of business out there in Oakland.
This one could turn into a barn burner. The New Orleans Saints taking on the LA Rams. All signs point to this being in the 40s for both teams. What do the defenses have to offer, though, to silence those offensive weapons?
Third down defense is going to be key. Who can get off the field on third down? If you go back to the NFC Championship game, that's where the Saints struggled against Los Angeles. I know the penalty aside, they couldn't get the stop when they needed, and credit Jared Goff for being the guy in that game to step up to the plate and supersede the perceptions about him not being clutch or not being able to handle pressure. He handled that pressure really well and got the win, ultimately getting the Rams to the Super Bowl. In this game, I worry about the Saints' inability to push the ball deep down the field. I think the Rams still have a good matchup here in the secondary. So I'm going to go with the Rams to win this one out there in LA against New Orleans.
The Chicago Bears defense certainly showed up in Week 1. The offense, though, certainly did not. More questions around Mitch Trubisky and whether he should be the top quarterback for the Bears. They take on the Broncos this week at Mile High. What do you need to see from Chicago?
Well, Mitch Trubisky has to play better. They had that game won against Green Bay, and it sounds like the same story last year. If he plays better, this team is unbeatable. Their defense stepped up, will still be aggressive. Offensively, can they get something in? Matt Nagy talked about this. He was a little bit too cute in his play calling. Just get your playmakers on the field, and get them the ball. Don't worry about the formations and the motions and the shifts. Just play clean, efficient football. This is a tough test for them. They're going up against what can be considered a similar aggressive style defense like Green Bay and Denver. I still like Chicago to win this game. I think you'll see a much better game plan from Nagy offensively. Defensively, they'll frustrate Flacco and company. So I do like the Bears to win this one.
On Sunday night, the Falcons taking on the Eagles. Julio Jones might have gotten the contract, but he didn't get much of the ball in week 1. Meanwhile, Carson Wentz with a great comeback win for Philadelphia. How do you see this ballgame going on Sunday night?
And Wentz was dynamic deep down the field. He threw some beautiful rainbows to Deshaun Jackson, who went off in week 1 in a divisional game against the Washington Redskins. But you're right. This game, to me, would come down to whether or not you can trust the Falcons defense. And unfortunately, there's already an injury up front along the offensive line with Chris Lindstrom. He's out. So now you're weaker up front, which was supposed to be a significant strength coming in by addressing those 2 offensive line needs in the first round. Now there's questions on the offensive line. Going up against the Eagles defensive front, Carson Wentz is looking good throwing the ball deep down the field. The Eagles still don't have a running game, but there's still too much offense, I think, especially on the perimeter against the secondary that I still have some questions by. I'm going with the Eagles.
And let's move on to Monday night. We talked about it in the open. 2 teams with a lot of hype that didn't perform in week 1. They now face each other at MetLife Stadium. Cleveland Jets. Who do you like in this one?
Let's look at the offense for the Browns. Offensive line was a huge question in that game against Tennessee. They could not keep the pressure out of the face of Baker Mayfield. Mayfield made some bad decisions with the football, put the ball in harm's way, was late on a couple of throws. The Jets secondary, I thought, played improved ball over the preseason, and I thought they really stepped up to the challenge and handled themselves well against Buffalo. Now, granted, John Brown went off against them, but it was mostly crossing routes and one big deep pass, so give them credit, but the secondary played well. Now, can they have the same success against a better receiving core in Cleveland? Well, that'll be the question. Defensively for the Browns, I thought they did a great job in attacking Marcus Mariota. When your defense is constantly out there because your offense can't sustain drives, it makes the defense look worse than what it was. So I thought the defense played well. The Jets offense has to find some level of continuity. You can't just throw the ball to Jamison Crowder, although we told you about Jamison Crowder here on the Football Game Plan Network. Can't always throw underneath to Jamison Crowder. These other guys, and that's going to be Robbie Anderson, those guys have to step up, but it's going to fall on the shoulders of Sam Darnold because he has to play better from a mechanics standpoint. His mechanics were all over the place. Feet weren't set. He missed a couple of deep throws against the Buffalo Bills in week 1. So with all of that being the backdrop, I'll look at a player like Le'Veon Bell having some success against the Browns, but it won't be enough. I do like Cleveland to take care of business on Monday night against the Jets.
The back pages in New York will be ready for that one if that occurs. That will do it for the Football Game Plan NFL All-32 show. For all your football knowledge, don't forget to go to footballgameplan.com, where you can listen to the NFL All-32 podcast with Emery, Troy Anthony, Alex Marinoni, and I breaking down the NFL news and notes, as well as our college football coverage, which can also be found on youtube.com/footballgameplan. Stay tuned to the Game Plus Network for the college football tailgate show right here on this channel at 6:30 tomorrow. For the Czar of the Playbook, Emery Hunt, I'm David Hassagen. Thanks for tuning in.